The inspiration for today's project comes from Claude Monet's Water Lilies, and it offers the chance to practice something that some people struggle with, that is, working in mirror images. Welcome back. Since 2004, I've been participating in something called the Year of Jewelry Project. The goal of the project is to create one piece of jewelry every week for a year following a particular theme. In 2017, one of the themes was based on Claude Monet's Water Lilies. Now, Monet was an impressionist painter who lived in the 19th century, and he did a series of about 250 paintings of water lilies from around and about his home in France. What I really liked about the series of paintings is how he captured the reflection of the trees and the bushes and the clouds and even the water lilies themselves in the water. So that's what I drew on as inspiration for this pair of earrings. The challenge with making earrings is getting them to mirror each other on the left and the right. In this project, they'll do that, but they'll also mirror each other from the top to the bottom. Now, that's not going to be as difficult as it might initially seem. The things you'll need to watch out for are the precise measuring and one particular step that happens fairly early on in the process. You'll also need to be aware that you're going to be switching through your tools very quickly, so have them laid out and ready on your work table.
The tools you'll need for this project are flat nose pliers, chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, flush cutting wire nippers, a 7mm dowel knitting needle or pen, a ruler or measuring tape, and a permanent fine tip marker. Optional tools are a nylon jaw plier, half round pliers, also known as ring bending pliers, and a rouge cloth. The materials you'll need are 2 pieces of wire 5 inches 12.5 centimeters long in 20 gauge hard or half hard round wire in a metal of your choice. As we go on, this metal will be called metal 1. You'll also need 2 pieces of wire 5 inches 12.5 centimeters long in 20 gauge hard or half hard round wire in a different metal of your choice. As we go on, we'll call this metal 2. You'll need a pair of shepherd's hook ear wires to finish these earrings, and I recommend using the same metal as metal 1. So whatever you're using as metal 1, make or buy the ear wires in that metal. You'll also need 2 4mm jump rings. The jump rings can be made of either metal, it's your choice.
Before you get started, you're going to need to do a little bit of prep work on your round nose pliers and on your wire.
With the permanent fine tip marker, make a mark at 5mm, 10mm, and 15mm from the tips of your pliers. Next, clean and straighten your wire using a rouge cloth and the nylon jaw pliers, or with your fingers. This doesn't have to be absolutely straight wire, but it does help if the wire is as straight as you can get it. Next, flush cut both the ends of the wires and file all the ends with the jeweler's file. Choose one piece of metal 1 wire and set the others aside. Grip the wire with the round nose pliers at the 5mm mark. Leave a tiny bit exposed. Rub your finger over the wire to check you want to be able to just barely feel the wire. Then, turn a loop in the end. Stop when the loop touches the wire again. If you bend it too far, it will create an unsightly divot, so stop when the loop just barely touches again. Use the flat nose pliers to close up any gaps. Turn the loop to the back so that the wire looks like a straight line from the front. With the flat nose pliers, grip the loop so that it's just barely covered, and then bend the wire to the left about 45 degrees.
This is the point at which you'll need to pay attention when you do the reflecting one, because you'll have to go in the opposite direction. This is the critical step that you'll need to do that sets up everything else going forward. I'll come back to this when we get to that point in the instructions, but I wanted to mention it now so that it's already in your thoughts as we move forward.
Now, set the flat nose pliers to one side of the bend and make another very, very slight bend. It doesn't need to go very much because it's just a little bit of a marker. Switch over to the round nose pliers and set the wire back into the pliers at the 5mm mark. Then bend it around in a hook shape. Switch over to the chain nose pliers and then turn the hook perpendicular to you. Set the pliers at the edge of the curve and bend the wire over the pliers to make a 90-degree bend. This creates the point in the first part of your heart. Now, if you notice that the bend at the bottom of the loop here looks a little extreme, take a second to straighten it out before you continue. You want the loop at the bottom and this bend that you just made to line up vertically. Switch back to the round nose pliers. Set the wire back into the 5mm mark and bend it all the way around, ending on the underside of the loop. At this point, you should be able to see your first heart. Flip the heart over and then make a mark with the permanent fine tip marker where it crosses over. Switch over to the flat nose pliers and set them next to the mark on the tail side of the wire. Bend the wire so that it folds back on itself and lines up with the side of the heart. When you look at the heart from the front, it should not be visible. It should look like a straight line. Turn the piece to the side again, and from the last bend, measure and mark 3/8 of an inch, 1 centimeter. Turn the piece so that the heart here is facing away from you. Then set the wire into the round nose pliers at the 10mm mark. Then bend the wire around in a hook. Switch over to the chain nose pliers. Set the pliers at the edge of the curve and then bend the wire over the pliers to make a 90-degree bend. Like last time, you're creating the point in the first part of your heart. Switch back to the round nose pliers again and grip the wire at the 10mm mark. Bend the wire all the way around, making sure that the tail goes to the top. Now, if you don't like how straight this is, you can use the ring bending pliers, also known as half round pliers, to add a little bit of a curve so that it looks a little bit more like a traditionally shaped heart. This is an optional step, so it's up to you. You should now see two hearts. Flip the piece over and mark where the wire crosses. Then set your flat nose pliers next to that mark and fold the wire back on itself. Looking at it from the front, you'll see the two hearts with the tail wire extending beyond the top. Turn the piece to the side again and measure and mark 1/2 inch 14mm from the last bend. Turn the piece so that the hearts are facing the front. Set the wire into the 15mm mark on the round nose pliers and bend the tail wire into a hook. Then, just like the last two times, switch over to the chain nose pliers and set the tips next to the curve of the hook and make a 90-degree bend to create the point in the heart. Switch back over to the round nose pliers, again put it down into the 15mm mark, and then bend the wire all the way around so that it crosses on the underside again. You should now be able to see three hearts. Gently pull each of the hearts so that they are slightly offset from each other. Then, flip the piece over and mark where the wire crosses. Set your flat nose pliers next to that mark and fold the wire back on itself. When you turn it to the front again, you'll see a little bit of a stem here extending from the top. Measure 1/4 inch from the top of the heart, cut it off flush, and file the end. Then, switch back to the round nose pliers and use this 5mm mark, set the piece into the pliers, and turn a vertical loop that ends on the back. Now, before you set this piece aside, look at it from the side and use your flat nose pliers to close up the folds a little bit. This will help to make the piece look a little flatter, and it will prevent hair from getting caught in the earring.
So that's the first piece finished. Now, if you're someone who struggles with making mirror images, then I recommend that you go back to step 4, and I've put the time code where step 4 starts in the video right here, and go through the process again using the exact same steps, making exactly the same piece for your second one as you've just done, only this time you do it in metal tube. The reason why I recommend that is because you've just gone through the whole process, all of the steps are fresh in your mind, and going back and doing it in metal tube right now will help you to get better results.
Now, once you've finished going through all the steps again, what you'll have is the top half of one earring and the bottom half of the second earring.
So set those two pieces aside and then grab your next piece of metal 1. Now, one of the things that I do to help me when I'm making mirror images is to consistently do all of the actions in exactly the same way, in exactly the same direction. So what that means is that if you're used to turning your wrist in a particular way, so counterclockwise, then always turn your wrist exactly the same way, counterclockwise. If you're used to pushing your wire away from you, then always push your wire away from you. What you're doing is taking advantage of the body memory that you've built up. You know how much pressure to apply, you know what it feels like, and so you can make that work for you as you're making the reflecting piece. The other thing that I do is I pay attention to how the piece is oriented, and that's a key thing that we're going to be dealing with as we make the reflecting piece. Now, many of the steps are going to be exactly the same, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but when we get to critical differences, I'll slow down to real-time video again.
We start back at steps 4 and 5, turning a loop in the end of the wire and making sure that the end stops when it touches. At step 6, where the first time you turned the loop so that it was facing the back and you saw nothing but a straight line, this time you'll want to turn it so that the loop is facing towards the front, and you do see it.
This is the critical step because it determines which way your hearts are going to be reflecting when you finish.
From here, you'll continue working exactly the same, making a 45-degree bend to the left, gripping the wire next to the bend with the flat nose pliers next to the loop, and adding a very small bend. Then switch over to the round nose pliers, set the wire at the 5mm mark on the pliers, and bend a hook. Switch over to the chain nose pliers and grip the wire at the curve, and then bend the wire over the pliers to form a 90-degree bend. Switch back to the round nose pliers, set the wire back into the 5mm mark, and bend it all the way around. This time, instead of ending on the underside of the work, you're going to lay the Tay-wire on top. From here, you continue following the steps as the same as before. Mark where the wire crosses over, then fold the wire onto itself with the flat nose pliers. When you turn to look at the heart from the front, you'll see that it's already the mirror image of what you made the first time. Check it against the piece you've already finished to make sure. Measure and mark 3/8 of an inch, 1 centimeter from the last bend, then turn the piece so that the heart is facing the front. Set the wire into the round nose pliers at the 10mm mark and bend the wire around in a hook. Switch over to the chain nose pliers. Set the pliers at the edge of the curve and bend the wire over the pliers to make a 90-degree bend. Switch back to the round nose pliers again, gripping the wire at the 10mm mark, then bend the wire all the way around, making sure that the tail stays on the underside. Mark where the wire crosses, then use your flat nose pliers to fold the wire back on itself. Turn the piece to the side again and measure and mark 1/2 inch 14mm from the last bend. Then turn the piece so that the loop you made first is facing towards you. Set the wire into the bottom mark on the round nose pliers and bend the tail wire into a hook. Then switch over to the chain nose pliers, set the tips next to the curve of the hook, and make a 90-degree bend to create the point in the heart. Switch back to the round nose pliers, put it down into the 15mm mark, then bend the wire all the way around to make sure that it crosses on top. Check the hearts from the front view, and compare them to the first metal 1 piece you made again. Then flip the piece over, mark where the wire crosses, and then set your flat nose pliers next to the mark and fold the wire back on itself. Measure 1/4 inch from the top of the heart, cut it off flush, and file the end. Switch back to the round nose pliers and set the piece into the plier at the 5mm mark and turn a vertical loop that ends on the back. Finally, look at it from the side and use your flat nose pliers to close up the folds a little bit.
So now you have the two reflecting tops of your earrings, both made in metal 1. And to make the second bottom in metal 2, go back to this time signature in the video and go through all the steps again. Once you have all 4 pieces made, so 2 tops in metal 1 and 2 bottoms in metal 2, you can put them all together and finish your earrings.
Start by laying out the pieces on your table. Arrange them so that they mirror each other from left to right and from top to bottom. Open one of the jump rings by twisting it open. Then feed the bottom left piece followed by the top left piece. Then close up the jump ring again. Check to make sure both pieces have the hearts facing the front and are reflecting each other. Then put the other pair together as well. Open the jump ring, feed on the bottom, feed on the top, then close up again. Whether you're using a shepherd's hook that you made yourself or commercial ones, you'll need to make one small adjustment before you add them to your earrings. Most shepherd's hooks have a loop facing sideways so that they look like a straight line when you look at them from the front. Take your flat nose pliers and turn the loop so that it can be seen. Then twist it open, feed on the earring, and close it up again. Repeat for the other earring, but remember to turn the loop in the opposite direction.
Since you've gone to the trouble of making everything else in mirror images, you may as well. It's a small detail that shows people that you're paying attention. So there you have it. If you have any comments about this project, I would love to hear your feedback. You can leave me comments in the section below, or you can contact me through my website at thetaoofwire.com. If you join as a member, you can also leave your comments in our private members-only Facebook group. You can get more information about that by clicking on the link up here or clicking in the link in the description below. Thanks for watching today. Remember to like and share this project if you enjoyed it, and to click on the subscribe button with the little bell so that you get notifications about when I post new videos. Thanks for watching today. I'll see you next time.